Captain Elena Vasquez floated through the quiet command deck of the UNS Vigilant, her dark hair tied tightly in a regulation bun. The patrol ship cut silently through the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, its engines humming at the edge of her hearing. After 15 years in space, Elena barely noticed the background sounds anymore. They were just part of life in the Mars Defense Fleet. Another quiet day in the rocks, her first officer, Lieutenant Kim, said with a yawn. Sometimes I wonder why we even patrol out here. Elena smiled. Because someone has to. Pirates still try to hit the mining stations, and you never know what else might be out there. The year was 2157, and humanity had spread throughout their solar system. Mars colonies housed nearly 20 million people. The moons of Jupiter and Saturn each held smaller settlements. Mining operations dotted the asteroid belt. Humanity had come far from their first tentative steps into space. Yet they remained alone, confined to their home system, with no confirmed contact from other intelligent life. What they didn't know was that they weren't actually alone. The vast Galactic Confederation had been watching Earth for centuries. To them, Earth was classified as a death world, a planet with extreme conditions that created unusually tough and adaptable life forms. The Confederation kept their distance, monitoring but never approaching. They had rules about species like humans. Deathworlders were unpredictable, potentially dangerous. Elena was checking system reports when Communications Officer Patel's voice broke the routine. Captain, I'm picking up something strange. The young officer's fingers flew across his controls. It's not on any of our standard frequencies. Elena pushed off her chair and glided over to his station. What kind of signal? I'm not sure. It's not from any of our ships or stations. The pattern is... I've never seen anything like it. Patel looked up, his eyes wide. Captain, I think it might be artificial, but not human. The command deck went silent. Are you saying it's alien? Lieutenant Kim asked, voicing what everyone was thinking. Put it on speakers. Elena ordered, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. A strange series of pulses filled the command deck. They came in clear, distinct patterns, too regular to be natural cosmic noise. Elena felt the hair on her arms stand up. After centuries of silence, of wondering if humanity was alone in the universe, this could be the answer. Record everything, she said, and get me a direct channel to Mars Command. 2 days later, Elena stood in the conference room at Mars Defense headquarters, facing the most powerful people in the solar system. The United Nations Space Command had gathered its leadership in person and via holographic projection. Fleet Admiral Harrison occupied the center seat, his weathered face serious under short gray hair. Captain Vasquez, you're certain this signal is not of human origin? He asked. Yes, sir. We've ruled out all known human transmissions, natural phenomena, and equipment malfunctions. The signal uses prime numbers as a base sequence, a universal mathematical language. Dr. Kaito Nakamura, the system's foremost expert in theoretical xenolinguistics, stepped forward. The slim Japanese man had spent his career preparing for first contact, though many had called it a waste of time. The signal is deliberately constructed to be recognized by any technologically advanced species, he explained. It begins with basic mathematics, then builds to more complex information. We've managed to extract coordinates and some visual data. He activated the room's holographic display. A star system appeared, centered on a yellow-white star with several planets. Then came fragmented images, crystal-like structures that might be cities, strange beings with translucent bodies, and finally scenes of destruction, massive energy waves washing over a planet's surface. We believe it's a distress call, Dr. Nakamura continued. The civilization calls themselves the Luminari. Their home system is approximately 42 light-years from Earth, and they are facing some kind of catastrophic event they refer to as the Devourer. Admiral Harrison frowned. How long ago was this signal sent? Based on the point of origin, approximately 42 years ago, Dr. Nakamura answered, which means whatever disaster they were facing has already happened. The room erupted in debate. Some officials argued they should ignore the signal, it was already too late. Others saw an opportunity to finally make contact with alien life, perhaps learn from their technology. The discussion grew heated. Even if they're already gone, we could learn from their remains, said the Chinese representative. Or we could find ourselves walking into a trap, countered the representative from the African Union. Through it all, Elena remained quiet, studying the images of the crystal cities burning under waves of energy. Finally, Admiral Harrison turned to her. Captain Vasquez, you found the signal. What's your take? Elena took a deep breath. Sir, in all my years of space service, I've learned one thing. When someone calls for help, you answer, even if you might be too late. Because next time, it could be us sending that call. Dr. Nakamura raised his hand. There's something else in the message we just decoded, a direct address. He adjusted his glasses nervously. It says, "We know of your kind. Your world has forged you in fire and ice. You alone might survive what comes. Please." Silence fell over the room. They knew about us? The European Union representative asked. How is that possible? It appears we have not been as alone as we thought, Dr. Nakamura said quietly. They specifically asked for our help because of what we are, a species from a high-gravity, high-radiation planet with extreme climate variations. What we consider normal would kill many other forms of life. Admiral Harrison stood up. His decision was clear in his eyes before he spoke. Ladies and gentlemen, humanity has wondered for centuries if we are alone in the universe. Now we know we are not, and our first communication from beyond our solar system is a cry for help. He looked around the room. I don't know about you, but I'm not willing to let humanity's first act on the galactic stage be to ignore that cry. Elena felt pride swell in her chest as the Admiral continued. Captain Vasquez, I'm promoting you to commander. You'll lead the Vanguard ship. Dr. Nakamura, you'll continue working on translations. As for the rest of you, he surveyed the room. I want plans for an expeditionary force on my desk in 48 hours. If these luminaries still exist, we're going to help them. If they don't, we're going to find out what happened. Either way, humanity is about to take its first step into the stars. As the room burst into activity, Elena caught Dr. Nakamura's eye. The scientist looked both terrified and exhilarated. Commander, he said, testing her new rank, do you think we can really help them? We might be centuries behind whatever other civilizations exist out there. Elena thought about Earth's long, violent history, how humans had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and near-environmental collapse, how they had clawed their way into space through sheer determination. Doctor, she replied, if there's one thing humans know how to do, it's survive against impossible odds. And we're about to show the galaxy what that means. Commander Elena Vasquez stood at the observation deck of Mars Orbital Station, watching as ships gathered in the space above the red planet. 2 weeks had passed since the discovery of the alien signal, and humanity had moved with surprising speed. The United Nations Space Command had named the mission Operation Salvation, and ships from every nation and colony were answering the call. It's an impressive sight, said Dr. Kaito Nakamura, joining her at the window. The scientist had dark circles under his eyes from endless hours translating more fragments of the luminary message. Elena nodded. I counted 137 ships already, and more arriving every day. Below them, Mars glowed orange-red in the sunlight. Around it, vessels of all shapes and sizes moved into formation. Sleek military cruisers, bulky colony ships, massive cargo haulers, and even retrofitted mining platforms with newly installed engines. Most species would send a diplomatic team, Kaito said. Maybe a scientific expedition, a few ships at most. Elena smiled. That's not how humans do things. Fleet Admiral Winston Clark had taken command of the operation. His first order had shocked the solar system. We're not sending a ship, we're sending a fleet. While the diplomats worried about how such a show, a force might look to the luminary or any other aliens they encountered, Clark was firm. If there's danger out there that can destroy an advanced civilization, I'm not sending our people unprepared. We go ready for anything. or we don't go at all. The backbone of the fleet would be 7 newly completed Thermopylae-class carriers. They were the largest and most advanced ships humanity had ever built, originally designed for an interplanetary, or that never happened. Now they would serve a different purpose. Elena's new ship, the UNS Tenacity, would lead the vanguard. As a commander, she would be responsible for the safety of over 600 crew members on a mission that might never return home. "Have you finished selecting your crew?" Kaito asked. "Almost," Elena replied. "It's not easy. We need the best, but we can only take volunteers. Not everyone wants to sign up for what might be a one-way trip." The crew selection process had become known across the solar system as the Assembly of the Damned. Every person who volunteered knew they might never see Earth or their families again. The Alcubierre drives that would propel them faster than light were experimental. The dangers they might face were unknown. Yet for every position, dozens of people volunteered. "People want to be part of history," Kaito said, "and some just want to help." Elena's communication device chimed. She was needed in the command center. "Admiral." Clark stood before a holographic display of the entire fleet when Elena entered. His tall frame cast a long shadow, and his voice carried to every corner of the room. "We've received approval for the final ship manifest," he announced to the gathered officers. 317 vessels carrying just over 97,000 personnel, the largest fleet humanity has ever assembled. Elena felt the weight of the moment. Nearly 100,000 souls venturing into the unknown based on a 42-year-old distress call. Engineering. "Reports the Alcubierre drives are ready for testing," continued Clark. "If successful, they'll cut our journey from centuries to months." The Alcubierre drive was humanity's newest and most dangerous technology. By warping space itself, contracting it in front of the ship and expanding it behind, the ships could effectively travel faster than light without breaking the laws of physics. The theory had existed for over a century, but only recently had humans managed to create the massive negative energy fields required. "What about the radiation shielding?" asked a captain from the European Space Agency. "Improved, but not perfect," answered Clark honestly. "Engineering teams will rotate through high-exposure areas. Everyone gets equal risk." After the meeting, Clark pulled Elena aside. "Commander, I have the latest translation from Dr. Nakamura's team. I think you should see it." He handed her a tablet. On it was a new message from the Luminari, decoded from the continuing transmission. "Our cities burn." The third pulse was stronger than predicted. "Half our world is sterile now. The Confederation has taken some of our leaders and cultural treasures, but abandoned the rest of us. If any civilization receives this, know that we once existed. We were the Luminari, and our light is fading." Elena felt her throat tighten. "They're still sending updates, or were 42 years ago." Clark nodded grimly. "Which means some of them might still be alive when we arrive. We need to move faster. Your ship tests the Alcubierre drive tomorrow. If it works, the rest of the fleet will follow within the week." The next morning, Elena stood on the bridge of the Tenacity. The newly commissioned vessel still smelled of fresh metal and plastic. Her crew worked at their stations, checking and rechecking systems for the most important test in human history. "Alcubierre drive at 100% charge," reported Chief Engineer Rodriguez. "Negative energy field stable. We're ready, Commander." Elena took a deep breath. If this worked, humans would no longer be bound to their solar system. If it failed, the Tenacity and her crew might be torn apart or lost forever in the space between stars. "Begin test jump sequence," she ordered. "Target. 1. Astronomical unit out, then back." The ship hummed around them as power flowed into the exotic matter ring surrounding the vessel. On screens around the bridge, space itself seemed to warp and bend. "Field generation stable," called out Rodriguez. "Preparing for jump in 3, 2, 1. The stars outside the viewport stretched into lines. Elena felt a strange sensation, as if her body was being gently pulled in all directions at once. Then in the blink of an eye, the sun appeared as a distant point of light. Jump successful, shouted the navigation officer. We are exactly 1 AU from departure point. A cheer went up across the bridge. Humanity had just made its first faster-than-light jump. Prepare for return jump, Elena ordered, unable to keep the smile from her face. 5 minutes later, the Tenacity reappeared exactly where it had started. As soon as communications were established, Admiral Clark's face appeared on the main screen. Well done, Commander Vasquez. How does it feel to make history? Elena looked around at her proud crew. It feels like just the beginning, sir. When do we leave for the Luminary? 1 week, Clark replied. The people of Earth are calling this mission everything from the most noble thing we've ever done to the most foolish. Either way, in 1 week, we find out if humanity is ready for the galaxy. Dr. Nakamura, who had joined them for the test, looked at the stars on the view screen. I've decoded more of their language. The Luminary have a saying, light travels far, but hope travels further. I think they would be pleased to know how far their hope has reached. Elena nodded. Then we won't let them down. 1 week to prepare, and then we bring that hope back to them. As word of the successful test spread throughout the solar system, the final preparations for Operation Salvation accelerated. Humanity's greatest journey was about to begin. The day of departure came with little ceremony. Earth and Mars grew smaller in the viewports as the massive human fleet moved to their jump positions. Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Tenacity, watching as the ships formed up around the 7 massive Thermopylae carriers. The fleet stretched out for thousands of kilometers, a testament to humanity's determination. All ships report ready for jump sequence, her communications officer announced. Elena nodded. Send the signal to Admiral Clark. Vanguard is prepared to lead the jump. On the main screen, Admiral Clark appeared from the flagship Dauntless. His face was solemn but determined. This is Admiral Clark to all ships. Today we venture farther than any humans have gone before. We carry with us the hopes of our species and the answer to a call for help that has traveled 42 light years to reach us. Some of us may not return, but all of us will be remembered for what we do here. Prepare for synchronized jump in 2 minutes. Elena felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. She looked around at her crew, each person focused, intently on their tasks. They all knew the risks. The Alcubierre drives had been tested, but never for a jump of this distance or with so many ships at once. Alcubierre drive at full power, reported Chief Engineer Rodriguez. Negative energy field stable. Coordinates locked for the Luminary system, added the navigation officer. All crew, secure for jump, Elena ordered. The ship sealed compartments, and everyone strapped into acceleration couches, though the Alcubierre drive theoretically produced no internal forces. Fleet jump in 10 seconds, came Admiral Clark's voice. 9, 8. Elena watched the countdown on her display. Humanity's greatest journey was about to begin. 3, 2, 1. Jump. Space warped around the fleet. Stars stretched into lines, then disappeared completely as the ships entered what the engineers called transit space. It wasn't quite like anything they had experienced in the test. Jumps. The viewports showed only a strange, shifting grayness. Transit successful, Rodriguez reported, checking his instruments. All systems nominal. Estimated time to arrival, 8 months. 8 months of travel through the void between stars. It seemed like both an eternity and an instant compared to the centuries it would have taken with conventional engines. Send word to all sections, Elena ordered. We've made history today. Now we maintain this ship and keep our people safe until we reach the Luminary. 3 weeks into the journey, the reality of deep space travel settled in. The crew established routines. Scientists continued studying the Luminary transmissions. Engineers performed constant maintenance on the experimental drives. Elena was reviewing reports in her quarters when the ship's alarms blared. Red alert! Commander to the bridge! Her first officer's voice came through the speakers. She rushed to the bridge to find chaos. Warning lights flashed across every console. Report, she demanded. Drive instability on the Leipzig, her officer explained, pointing to a display showing a cargo vessel 2 kilometers off their port side. Their field is fluctuating. If it collapses while in transit space, he didn't need to finish. A collapsed Alcubierre field could tear a ship apart or worse, damage the space-time around it, potentially affecting nearby vessels. "Get me a channel." "To their captain," Elena ordered. The face of a middle-aged woman appeared on screen, her expression grim against a background of flashing red lights. "Commander Vasquez, I'm Captain Schaefer. We're doing everything we can to stabilize, but our engineers say the control systems are failing." "Can you shut down safely?" Elena asked. "Negative. In transit space, a controlled shutdown requires full system control, which we've lost. We're looking at cascade failure in under 10 minutes. Elena made a quick decision. "Evacuate your engineering section. We'll send our teams over to attempt emergency stabilization." "Commander," Rodriguez protested, "if that ship's field collapses, while our people are aboard—" "I know the risks, Chief," Elena cut him off. "Assemble your best team, full radiation gear." Within minutes, a shuttle carried Rodriguez and 5 engineers across the short distance between ships. Elena watched on monitors as they entered the Leipzig's engine room, where radiation levels were already climbing dangerously. "The primary coupling is completely fused," Rodriguez reported, his voice strained. "We'll need to bypass it entirely and route power through the secondary systems." For the next 7 minutes, Elena watched her engineers work in conditions that would kill an unprotected human in minutes. Even with shielding, they were absorbing dangerous levels of radiation. "It's not stabilizing," Rodriguez finally reported. "We've bought maybe 5 minutes, but that's all. Captain Schaefer needs to order full evacuation now." Elena relayed the message. The Leipzig's 147 crew members began emergency procedures, boarding escape pods designed to function even in transit space. "Tenacity will retrieve all pods," Elena promised Captain Schaefer. "What about you and the bridge crew?" "We're staying until everyone else is clear," Schaefer replied firmly. "Someone has to keep what's left of the systems running until then." The next 4 minutes were a race against time. Escape pods launched from the Leipzig while Rodriguez and his team made a final attempt to prevent disaster. "Last pod away," Schaefer reported. "Engineer Rodriguez, you and your team need to leave now." 30 more seconds, Rodriguez insisted, hands flying over controls. "Chief, that's an order," Elena cut in. "Get your team out now." Rodriguez hesitated only briefly before acknowledging. Elena watched anxiously as her engineers boarded their shuttle and pushed away from the Leipzig. They were halfway back to the Tenacity when the Leipzig's drive field collapsed. The ship seemed to fold in on itself, compressed by forces beyond human comprehension. A blast of energy rippled outward, catching the shuttle and sending it tumbling. "Rodriguez, report," Elena called, her knuckles white as she gripped her chair. For 3 agonizing seconds there was no response. Then, "We're alive, Commander. Radiation shielding held. But the Leipzig, she's gone. And Captain Schaefer with her." Elena closed, her eyes briefly. "Get back to the ship, Chief. We'll retrieve the escape pods." By the end of the day, the Tenacity had taken aboard all Leipzig survivors. 3 more engineers were treated for radiation exposure. The fleet adjusted formation to fill the gap where the Leipzig had been, and the journey continued. 5 months into the voyage, the fleet had lost 3 ships to drive malfunctions. Each time, the majority of their crews had been saved by the quick actions of nearby vessels. But 219 lives had been lost, each name recorded in a memorial list that grew longer as the journey progressed. During this time, Dr. Nakamura made a breakthrough in understanding the luminary transmissions. "Commander, I've decoded more detailed information about the Devourer," he told Elena during their weekly meeting. "It's not a living entity as some theorized. It's a neutron star with an irregular magnetic field. It generates massive radiation pulses at unpredictable intervals." Elena frowned. "And these pulses hit the luminary homeworld?" "Yes. Their planet maintains a sun-synchronous orbit, which unfortunately places it directly in the path of these pulses. Every few years, the luminary evolved with very little natural radiation. They have no biological defenses against it. Unlike humans, Elena noted, we evolved with background radiation and cosmic rays. Our cells have repair mechanisms. Exactly, Nakamura confirmed. And spacefaring humans like your crew have additional protections. What kills a luminary might only increase our cancer risk slightly. This information gave their mission new urgency. If the luminary were as vulnerable as the data suggested, even survivors would need immediate assistance with radiation protection. Their discussion was interrupted by a sensor alert. Something was approaching the fleet. Unknown vessels detected, reported the tactical officer. 3 ships, moving at high speed on an intercept course. Elena ordered battle stations. The fleet's military vessels moved to protective positions around the civilian ships. The unknown vessels slowed as they approached, keeping just outside weapons range. They were sleek, almost organic in design, with no visible engines or weapons. Far more advanced than anything humanity had built. "We're receiving a transmission," the communications officer announced. "It's not in any human language." Dr. Nakamura rushed to the communication station. "Let me hear it." After listening intently, he turned to Elena with wide eyes. "It's similar to languages in the Luminary transmissions. I think these might be ships from the Galactic Confederation the Luminary mentioned. Can you communicate with them?" Elena asked. "I can try a basic response using what I've learned." For nearly an hour, Nakamura worked to establish rudimentary communication. Finally, he succeeded in a simple exchange. "They're asking who we are and where we're going," he translated. "I've told them we're humans from Earth, responding to the Luminary distress call." The alien vessels maintained their distance for several more hours. Then, without further communication, they turned and accelerated away at incredible speed. "What do you think that was about?" Elena asked. "I believe they were surprised," Nakamura replied. "According to what we've decoded, the Confederation has been observing Earth for centuries. They classified us as Deathworlders, dangerous and unpredictable. I don't think they expected us to leave our solar system, let alone mount a rescue mission." After 8 months of travel through the void, the human fleet arrived at the edge of the Luminary system. Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Tenacity, watching as the ships dropped out of transit space one by one. The view screens showed a yellow-white star surrounded by 7 planets. According to the Luminary transmissions, their homeworld was the 3rd planet from the Sun. "All ships report successful exit from transit space," her first officer reported. "The fleet is regrouping in standard formation. Any signs of activity in the system?" Elena asked. The sensor officer shook his head. "Nothing yet, Commander. No ships detected, but we're picking up significant radiation levels throughout the system, consistent with Dr. Nakamura's neutron star theory." Admiral Clark's face appeared on the main screen. "Commander Vasquez, prepare your ship for advance reconnaissance. The Tenacity will lead a small group to the Luminary homeworld, while the main fleet holds position here." "Understood, Admiral," Elena replied. "We'll depart immediately." 5 ships broke away from the main fleet. The Tenacity, 2 defensive cruisers and 2 scientific vessels equipped with advanced sensors. As they approached the 3rd planet, Elena felt a growing tension. Had they traveled 42 light-years only to find a dead world? The planet Lumina came into view. A beautiful blue-green sphere with 2 small moons. From orbit, it looked peaceful. But as they moved closer, the damage became visible. Sensors show massive radiation scarring across the northern hemisphere, reported the science officer. Vegetation patterns indicate at least 3 major extinction events in the past century. The most recent appears to be approximately 1 year ago. "Life signs?" Elena asked, barely daring to hope. There was a pause as the officer adjusted the sensors. "Yes, we're detecting concentrated life signs, primarily in the southern hemisphere. Several large underground structures show power signatures and atmospheric regulation, consistent with habitation domes." Relief washed over Elena. Some of the Luminary had survived. "We're receiving a transmission from the surface," the communications officer announced suddenly. It appears to be on the same frequency as the original SOS." Dr. Nakamura, who had transferred to the Tenacity for the approach, rushed to the communication station. After a moment, he looked up with wide eyes. "They're asking who we are," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "They've detected our ships and want to know if we're from the Confederation." Elena moved to stand beside him. "Tell them we're humans from Earth. We received their distress call and came to help." Nakamura composed the message using the Luminari language he had studied for months. After sending it, the bridge crew waited in tense silence. The response came 3 minutes later. This time it was not just audio but a visual transmission. The screen showed a tall, crystalline being. Its body was semi-transparent, with internal structures that glowed with soft blue light. When it spoke, patterns of light rippled through its form. Nakamura listened carefully, then turned to Elena, with awe on his face. "Commander, they're inviting us to land. They say they've been waiting for us for a very long time." The landing site was a vast circular platform outside what had once been a major city. Now, half the crystalline towers lay in ruins, their once gleaming surfaces dulled by radiation damage. A delegation of 7 humans prepared to disembark from the Tenacity's shuttle. Elena led the group with Dr. Nakamura beside her as translator. They wore lightweight environmental suits as a precaution, though sensors indicated the air was breathable. "Remember," Elena told her team, "we represent all of humanity. This is first contact with an alien civilization. Let's make it count." The shuttle door opened and Elena took the first step onto the surface of Lumina. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth's, making her movements feel unusually springy. The sky above was a deep turquoise, unlike any sky she had seen before. Waiting, at the edge of the landing platform was a group of Luminari. They stood nearly 3 meters tall, their crystalline bodies catching the light of their sun. The leader stepped forward, its body pulsing with complex patterns of light. "I am Grand Illuminator Sharvex," Nakamura translated as the being spoke, "leader of what remains of the Luminari Conclave. You are the ones called humans?" "Yes," Elena replied, allowing Nakamura to translate. "I am Commander Elena Vasquez of the United Nations Space Command. We received your distress call and came to offer assistance." The Luminari leader's body flashed with rapid pulses of light that Nakamura didn't immediately translate. "What did it say?" Elena whispered. "I'm not sure," Nakamura admitted. "The pattern indicates extreme emotion. I think they're overwhelmed." Sharvex composed itself and spoke again. "You traveled across the stars because we asked for help? The Confederation said no one would come, that we were doomed by the natural order. We don't believe in leaving people to die when we can help," Elena replied simply. The Luminari leader studied them for a long moment. "The ancient texts spoke of you, the Forgeborn, those whose world tested them with fire and ice and radiation. We didn't believe you truly existed until we detected your planet's transmission centuries ago." Elena exchanged surprised glances. With her team, the Luminari had known about Earth for much longer than they had realized. "Grand Illuminator," Nakamura asked, "how many of your people remain?" The crystalline being's light dimmed noticeably. "We once numbered over 3 billion across our world and moons. Now fewer than 30 million survive, all in the deep shelters. The last pulse from the Devourer was stronger than any before. It sterilized our northern continents completely." "And the Confederation?" Elena asked. "The other alien civilizations? They offered no help?" "They took some of us," Sharvex replied. "A few thousand deemed culturally significant, our greatest artists, scientists, and leaders. They preserve samples of dying species, but do not interfere with what they call cosmic inevitability. When we detected your fleet arriving, we thought they had returned for more specimens." Elena felt anger building inside her. To treat an entire civilization as nothing more than specimens to be catalogued and selectively preserved seemed unimaginably cruel. "We didn't come to take," she said firmly. "We came to save. Our fleet includes 317 ships with space for millions of evacuees. We can begin immediate transport of your people to safety." The luminary leader's body flashed with such brilliant light that the humans had to shield their eyes. You would do this? For strangers across the stars? Sharvex asked. That's what humans do, Elena replied. Now please show us your situation, so we can begin planning the evacuation. The luminary capital was built mostly underground now. Elena and her team followed Sharvex through massive crystal tunnels into a vast cavern. Here, thousands of luminari lived in crowded conditions. Their natural light was dimmed in the confined space, giving the cavern a twilight appearance. Our scientists predict another pulse from the Devourer within 2 weeks, Sharvex explained as they entered a control center. This one will likely sterilize our remaining habitable land. How much warning will you have before the pulse hits? Elena asked. Approximately 6 hours from detection to impact. Elena did quick calculations in her head. Even with every ship in the fleet helping, evacuating 30 million people in 2 weeks would be nearly impossible. Evacuating them in 6 hours was definitely impossible. Admiral Clark needs to see this, she said to her team. We'll need to modify our plan significantly. As they prepared to return to the ship, Sharvex approached Elena privately. Commander, there is something else you should know, the Luminari leader said quietly. The Confederation vessels we detected departing the system as you arrived, they will return. They do not approve of interference with what they consider natural extinction events. Let them come, Elena replied. We didn't travel 42 light years to be turned away. One way or another, we're getting your people to safety. As the human delegation returned to their shuttle, Dr. Nakamura walked beside Elena. That line you said about not leaving people to die, I think it confused them, he commented. From what I've gathered, the Confederation species evolved in safer environments. They never developed our instinct to run toward danger to help others. Elena looked back at the underground city where millions of aliens were now placing their hope in humanity. Then I guess we'll have to show them how it's done. Admiral Clark stood in the conference room of the flagship Dauntless, looking grave as he addressed the fleet's senior officers. The holographic displays showed the Luminari homeworld and the approaching neutron star that the aliens called the Devourer. The situation is worse than we anticipated, he said. Our scientists have analyzed the data from the Luminari. The next radiation pulse will be significantly stronger than previous events. It won't just hit part of the planet. It will likely sterilize the entire star system. Commander Elena Vasquez felt her stomach tighten. The evacuation had been underway for 3 days, with human ships working around the clock to transport Luminari refugees. But they had only managed to evacuate about 2 million out of 30 million survivors. We need more time, she said. Even with every ship running at maximum capacity, we can't evacuate everyone before the pulse hits. Dr. Nakamura, who had been working closely with Luminari scientists, spoke up. The Luminari have been tracking the neutron star's cycles for centuries. They're certain. We have less than 10 days before the next pulse. The room fell silent as the magnitude of the crisis sank in. Even if they worked non-stop, they would save at most 1/3 of the remaining Luminari. The rest would be abandoned to certain death. There has to be another solution, Elena insisted, unwilling to accept defeat. One of the fleet's chief scientists, Dr. Wei, cleared her throat. Commander, I might have an idea. It's risky, but it could buy us more time. All eyes turned to her as she stood and approached the holographic display. The Thermopylae carriers have the most powerful electromagnetic field generators ever built by humans, she explained. If we position them in specific orbits around Lumina, we might be able to create a temporary shield against the radiation pulse. A shield? Admiral Clark asked skeptically. Against a neutron star's radiation? Not a complete shield, Dr. Wei clarified. Nothing could block it entirely, but we might be able to reduce its intensity enough to protect key areas of the planet for the critical hours while the pulse passes. It would give us time to complete the evacuation. Elena leaned forward, hope rising. Would it work? Dr. Wei's expression was serious. In theory, yes, but there's a cost. The ships creating the shield would be exposed to extreme radiation, their systems would eventually fail, and their crews. She didn't need to finish. Everyone understood what she was saying. The crews of the ships forming the shield would receive lethal radiation doses. Admiral Clark studied the holographic models. How many ships would we need? All 7 Thermopylae carriers, positioned precisely, Dr. Wei answered. They're the only vessels with powerful enough field generators. 7 ships, over 14,000 crew members. The room fell silent again as the officers processed this information. I'll do it, Elena said suddenly. The tenacity will take position as part of the shield. Commander, Clark began. We came here to save these people, Elena interrupted. Not just some of them, all of them. If this is what it takes, then this is what we do. Before Clark could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. The tactical officer rushed in. Admiral, we've detected multiple ships entering the system. Configuration matches the Confederation vessels we encountered during transit. Within an hour, the Confederation presence had grown to over 20 vessels. They took up position at the system's edge, watching but not approaching the human fleet or the luminary world. Transmission came through on all frequencies. Dr. Nakamura worked quickly to translate as an image appeared on the main screen, a being unlike any they had seen before. It appeared to be composed of swirling gases contained within a transparent shell. I am Ambassador Vorlox of the Galactic Confederation, Nakamura translated. We observed that the species known as humans has interfered with the natural extinction cycle of the luminary. This is contrary to Confederation policy. Admiral Clark stepped forward. This is Fleet Admiral Winston Clark of the United Nations Space Command. We received a distress call and responded as any civilized people would. We're evacuating survivors from a natural disaster. The gas-like being's colors shifted rapidly as it replied. The radiation events from CX-279 neutron star are not disasters but natural cosmic processes. All species face extinction eventually. The Confederation preserves cultural samples but does not interfere with planetary life cycles. Elena couldn't contain her anger. You're talking about 30 million living beings, not samples in a museum. The ambassador's gases swirled faster. The emotional response is typical of Deathworld species. Your kind evolved in harsh conditions where cooperation against environmental threats was necessary for survival. Most evolved species understand that the universe has its own balance. Those who cannot adapt must make way for those who can. Admiral Clark's voice was cold with controlled fury. That's the difference between you and us, Ambassador. You accept the universe as it is. We insist it can be better. The Confederation ambassador seemed unmoved. We will not prevent your evacuation efforts. However, we must inform you that your fleet's presence here violates several Confederation protocols. When your mission is complete, representatives must appear before the Confederation Council to explain these actions. We'll worry about that later, Clark replied. Right now, we have people to save. After the transmission ended, Clark turned to his officers. They're not stopping us, but they're not helping either. We proceed with the evacuation and the shielding plan. On the surface of Lumina, chaos had erupted as word spread about the coming pulse. The orderly evacuation began to break down as Luminari crowded the transport sites, desperate to escape. Elena beamed down with a team to meet with Grand Illuminator Sharvex. The Luminari leader's light had dimmed noticeably since their first meeting. My people are losing hope, Sharvex said. They know not everyone will be saved. That's why I'm here, Elena replied. We have a plan that might allow us to save everyone, but we need your help to implement it. She explained the shielding strategy. The 7 carriers would create an electromagnetic barrier that would reduce the radiation enough for the Luminari to survive until evacuation was complete. But they needed the Luminari to designate gathering areas that could be specifically protected. Sharvex's body pulsed with rapid light patterns. You would sacrifice your ships for this? If necessary, Elena confirmed. And their crews? Elena hesitated only briefly. We'll evacuate as many as possible before the pulse hits. But yes, there will be those who remain aboard to maintain the shields until the end. The Luminary leader was silent for a long moment. Then, Its crystalline form glowed with a brilliance Elena hadn't seen before. In all our history, no species has offered such sacrifice for another, Sharvek said. The Confederation told us it was the natural order for the strong to survive and the weak to perish. You show us a different way. Together, they began planning the details of the shield operation. The Luminari would consolidate their remaining population into 4 major underground shelters in the southern hemisphere. The Thermopylae carriers would position themselves to create a protective field specifically over these areas. As preparations continued, Elena noticed Luminari watching the human workers with a strange intensity. When she asked Sharvex about it, the leader explained, "Your bodies emit a faint light in our vision. When you work in the high radiation zones that would kill us instantly, the light grows stronger. My people have a phrase for it now. They burn so brightly." 3 days later, the Devourer's approach was detected. The massive neutron star's irregular magnetic field was already sending out waves of charged particles ahead of the main pulse. The 7 Thermopylae carriers moved into their defensive positions, their enormous engines straining to hold them steady against Lumina's gravity. On the bridge of the Tenacity, Elena gave her final orders. Non-essential personnel will evacuate to support ships. Engineering teams will remain to maintain the shield systems. I will stay in command until the last possible moment. As the countdown to the pulse began, Elena looked out at the beautiful crystalline world they had come so far to save. Then her gaze turned to the approaching storm of deadly radiation that threatened to wipe it all away. Let's show the universe what humans do. In the face of impossible odds, she told her crew, we burn brightly. The radiation pulse from the neutron star reached its peak intensity. From the flagship Dauntless, positioned safely away from Lumina, Admiral Clark watched the tactical displays with growing concern. 3 of the 7 Thermopylae carriers maintained their protective barrier, but 4 had already failed. Their crews had been evacuated to support vessels, but the ships themselves were lost, their systems fried by the intense radiation. Status report on the Tenacity, Clark demanded. Shield, generators at 17% and falling, reported the communications officer. Commander Vasquez is still aboard with a skeleton crew. They're manually rerouting power to maintain the field as long as possible. On the surface of Lumina, the final evacuation ships were loading. Grand Illuminator Sharvex supervised as the last civilians boarded. The underground shelters were emptying, their occupants rushing through the protective corridors toward the waiting human vessels. Aboard the Tenacity, the situation was dire. Most systems had failed, and emergency lighting cast a red glow over the bridge. Elena Vasquez stood at her command post, sweat running down her face from the overwhelming heat as cooling systems failed one by one. Engineering reports the primary shield generator has failed, her remaining bridge officer reported. Switching to secondary systems. How much longer can we hold? Elena asked. 15 minutes at most, Commander. Elena checked the evacuation. Reports. That might be just enough. What's our radiation exposure? The officer hesitated before answering. Beyond safe limits, Commander. Medical can't do much at these levels. Elena had known this was a one-way mission for whoever stayed to maintain the shields. She had ordered most of her crew to evacuate, but a small team had volunteered to remain with her until the end. Tell engineering they're the finest crew I've ever served with, she said, and prepare the final evacuation shuttles. Everyone but essential shield operators leaves in 5 minutes. Including you, Commander? Elena shook her head. The shield needs coordination from the bridge. I'll stay until the last transport clears. The surface. As her remaining officers left to prepare the shuttles, Elena opened a channel to Grand Illuminator Sharvex on the surface. Illuminator, what's your status? The crystalline being's image appeared on her screen, its light patterns showing clear distress. The final transports are loading now, Commander. Nearly everyone is aboard. But I have something for you before you leave. Sharvex held up a large crystal formation that glowed with swirling internal lights. This is our eternal record. It contains our complete history, our genetic codes, our art and science, everything that makes us who we are. Elena understood the significance immediately. A backup in case something goes wrong. Yes, I will bring it to your ship personally. No, Elena said firmly. There's no time. I'm sending a shuttle directly to your position. Give the crystal to my pilot and then board immediately. That's an order, Illuminator. For once, the alien leader didn't argue. As you wish, Commander, and thank you for everything. In the flagship Dauntless, Admiral Clark received the latest update. The last civilian transports are away from the surface, sir. All remaining Luminari are evacuated except for Grand Illuminator Sharvex, who is boarding a shuttle from the Tenacity now. And Commander Vasquez? The communications officer hesitated. Still aboard the Tenacity, sir. She reports shield failure. Imminent, but says she can hold long enough for Sharvex's shuttle to clear the atmosphere. Clark's face hardened. Get me a direct channel to her. Now. On the Tenacity's bridge, Elena heard the Admiral's voice through static. Commander, I'm ordering you to evacuate immediately. With respect, sir, Elena replied, her hands working the shield controls. If I leave now, the shield fails. If the shield fails, the Luminary shuttle with Sharvex won't make it to safety. I can buy them 3 more minutes by staying. That's not worth your life, Commander. Elena smiled grimly. That's where you're wrong, sir. This is exactly what we came here to do. As the transmission cut out, Elena turned her attention back to the shield controls. The system was failing rapidly now, but she could keep it focused on the escape corridor for the final shuttle. On her screen, she watched the small craft carrying Sharvex and the Luminary's eternal record rise through the atmosphere. Just a little longer, she whispered to her dying ship. Hold together just a little longer. The shuttle cleared the upper atmosphere and accelerated toward the waiting fleet. Elena allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before checking her own escape options. The radiation levels had climbed too high. Even if she left now, the damage to her body was beyond medical treatment. At least it was for something that mattered, she said to the empty bridge. Then, unexpectedly, a new alert sounded. A ship was approaching, one of the Confederation vessels. Before Elena could react, she felt the strange sensation of a transportation beam. The bridge of the Tenacity disappeared around her in a flash of light. Elena woke in a strange, curved chamber filled with mist. Her body felt oddly light, and the pain she had expected from radiation exposure was absent. A figure approached, the gaseous being Ambassador Vorlox contained in its transparent shell. You have survived, Commander Vasquez, the ambassador's translated voice stated. Our medical technology was able to repair most of the radiation damage to your cellular structure. Why? Elena asked, confused. Your people made it clear this wasn't your concern. The ambassador's gases swirled in complex patterns. The Confederation Council has reconsidered certain policies. Your actions were observed by many species. Questions are being asked about our non-interference stance. Elena sat up slowly. You saved me as a political move? I saved you because you forced me to question assumptions held for millennia, Vorlox replied. No Confederation species would sacrifice themselves for another. It is not logical by our understanding. Yet you did it without hesitation. It's what humans do, Elena said simply. 1 year after departing Earth, the human fleet returned to the Sol system. Of the 317 ships that left, 298 returned, carrying 17 million Luminari refugees alongside 97,000 human crew members. The lost ships and the 2,413 human lives they had cost were honored in memorial services across Earth and Mars. The Luminari were settled primarily on Venus and Mars, whose conditions could be modified to support their crystalline biology. Teams of human and Luminary scientists began the work of terraforming sections of both planets to create permanent homes for the refugees. In the months that followed, humanity's place in the galaxy changed forever. The Galactic Confederation, forced to acknowledge humans as a major power, extended formal diplomatic recognition to Earth. A human embassy opened on the Confederation capital world, with Elena Vasquez serving as humanity's first ambassador. Other species began approaching Earth with their own problems, Some faced natural disasters, others environmental collapse, and a few were caught in ancient conflicts they couldn't resolve. All of them had heard what humans had done for the Luminari. The Confederation's policy of non-interference gradually gave way to a new approach inspired by humanity's example. A galactic relief force was established, with ships and personnel from multiple species working together to address crises throughout known space. Humans, with their unique resilience and determination, often formed the core of these teams. 6 months into her role as ambassador, Elena stood on the balcony of the embassy, looking out at the strange, beautiful Confederation capital. Grand, Illuminator Sharvek stood beside her, its crystalline form gleaming in the alien sunlight. "My people are thriving on Mars," Sharvex told her. "The radiation shielding your engineers designed allows us to live on the surface now." "I'm glad," Elena replied. "It was worth it then." "More than you know," the Luminari leader said. "Your actions have changed the way the galaxy thinks. For eons, the Confederation believed that natural selection applied to entire species, that those who could not adapt to cosmic threats deserved to vanish. You showed them another path." Elena was about to respond when her assistant approached, with an urgent message. A delegation from a previously unknown species had arrived at Earth, carrying their own distress signal. "What do they want?" Elena asked. Her assistant handed her the translated message. Elena read it and smiled. "What is it?" Sharvex asked. "They've heard what we did for you," Elena explained. "Their message is simple. We too need the Forgeborn." As Elena prepared to return to Earth to meet this new species in need, she reflected on humanity's new role in the galaxy. Earth had been classified as a death world, a harsh, dangerous planet that forged its life forms through adversity. What the Confederation had seen as a reason to fear humans had turned out to be their greatest strength. Humans didn't just survive. The forge of their brutal homeworld. They emerged from it with something the other species of the galaxy had never developed. The unshakable belief that when faced with disaster, you don't accept it. You fight. You save who you can. You send an entire fleet. And sometimes, against all odds, you change the universe.